What's up, tribe? Nick here from Ottawa, and today I want to share some thoughts on toe splay. Okay, now maybe a good place to start is, what does toe splay even mean? Splay means the ability for all your toes to spread apart from each other. And the natural human foot, so say you're Mowgli, you live in the jungle, you've never worn shoes, you have natural feet. You have feet that have not been disturbed or deformed by modern conventional shoes. And if you're Mowgli, your foot has a nice splay to it, which means that all your toes fan out in different directions. Your toes aren't overlapping or touching each other at rest. And what that allows for is this nice broad foot position that allows you to adopt a stable foot. Okay, so being able to splay your toes, number one, is a very powerful element in being able to have natural foot function, right? Being able to have a foot that can do what it's supposed to and support your body in a way that's stable to create a good foundation. Having an arch that's able to support itself and that's strong also has a lot to do with your ability of your toes to splay out and form a nice tripod position with your heel bone. Okay, so toe splay is very important. Now, why do we begin to lose it? Right? Why do most people's feet look like this? Where they come into a point where we start to get bunions, where we can get things like Morton's neuroma, where a nerve between the bones of the foot can get compressed, and it's quite simply said, it's footwear. Most shoes are not wide enough for the human foot, and most footwear tapers into a point. So if we have a foot that's supposed to fan out nice and wide, and we put it into a shoe that compresses it and puts it into a point, eventually it's going to deform our feet so that our big toe starts to go towards the others. That's called a bunion, where we can develop kind of a bump here. And we can develop, like I said before, all these things like Morton's neuroma. Okay, so if your toes are stuck together, it's okay, you're not alone, and you can reclaim the ability to splay your toes, right? And it's important for foot stability, but it's also important to mitigate the risk of injuries like bunions or like an neuroma or like plantar fasciitis, which can come when, you know, one of the elements that contributes to plantar fasciitis is when your toes get compressed together, you lose the ability to form that stable tripod, which is required in order to keep a stable arch. Okay, so it's important for your toes to be able to splay. Now, one way that you can start to get it back is actually what we call the human toe spreader. So you can take each of your hands, get into this sort of cross-leg position, take each of your fingers rather, put them between each of your toes. Okay, now if you got real stiff feet, this might not be comfortable at the start. Okay, so start slow with your fingers just inching in there. And if this is painful, it's two reasons usually. Number one, your feet are tight because you've worn compressive footwear, and the skin and the fascia between each of the toes is really stuck and gunky and tight. So it just takes a little bit of work. Reason number two, you might have insanely thick fingers. That's an option too. But either way, you should try and dig your fingers in there, and as they get more comfortable, you can kind of work forward, back, side to side. You know, just a minute of this can do a lot to open up the skin and the fascia. And when you release the tension between each toe, you give your toes at least a chance to be able to spread apart from each other, right? Because they should be able to get to the point where none of them are touching each other. Okay, so getting your fingers in there, really powerful way to kind of start to reclaim the ability to splay your toes. And it's free, right? You don't need any tools. We sell these TFC Wild Toes. So essentially when you grab your Wild Toes, they're little silicone toe spreaders. You'll put them on your foot. I like to put the rounded edge facing my foot, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter which way you put them on. And once they're on your foot, you know, we recommend wearing them when you're moving around instead of being static, because then you're actually retraining the muscles of the foot to be able to be active in those positions. But essentially the widest part of your foot, of a natural foot, of a healthy foot, is the tip of the toes. So if the base of your big toe, the ball of your foot is the widest part of your foot, then you have a little bit of work to do to open up the toes and be able to resplay them. Okay, so spreaders, you start wearing them around the house for 30 minutes as tolerated, and increase the time as you're able. Okay, now after that, you should also be able to start to work on actively splaying your toes. Okay, so you should be able to essentially spread all the toes so that you get them all separating from each other. And the ability to fan your toes is a combination of being able to use the muscles that do that motion, but also having enough slack between each of the toes so that the muscles aren't working against resistance of the skin and fascia that's been bunched up and tight because of time spent in narrow footwear. Okay, so shoes create the inability to splay the toes. If your toes are all bunched together, it can affect the arch of your foot. It can affect things like bunions or Morton's neuroma, so it's important to get it back. And the best way to get started with this is literally just 1 minute per day, per foot, and that'll get you a good start. Okay, so get your fingers, interlace them between the toes, use toe spreaders, whatever way you want to do it. It doesn't matter what technique you use, what matters is that you're consistent. Okay, so hopefully that gives you a little bit of information on why splaying your toes is useful and how you can get started reclaiming a nice natural toe splay. And we'll catch you in the next video.